Reintegration talks between Azerbaijani officials and the delegation representing Armenian separatists have come to an end. The discussions came as part of a peace agreement which was clinched just yesterday and was mediated by Russian peacekeepers. It came after Azerbaijan launched a 24-hour military operation in Nagorno-Karabakh this week. The ceasefire agreement included Armenian separatists laying down their weapons and handing them over to Azerbaijan. We can now bring in France 24's international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Doug,
hi, Delano.
Good afternoon. Is it fair to say that Azerbaijan was the one calling the shots in these talks?
It's fair and it's factual. Look, Azerbaijan's president, Ilham Aliyev, who I will call an authoritarian leader, he made a nationally televised speech on Wednesday evening, that is last night, local time, in which he basically said that local Karabakhs in Nagorno-Karabakh, that is the ethnic Armenians living in that enclave, should not forget, and these were his words, that they live in Azerbaijan. This was a clear assertion that that enclave, which had been until a couple of days ago an enclave with a separatist breakaway government with aspirations of having some sort of autonomy of their own, is very much part of Azerbaijan. Now, let's be clear. Nagorno-Karabakh for decades has been recognized as part of Azerbaijan internationally. The international community has recognized it. That said, the ethnic Armenians who led the separatist government in the enclave, which was populated mostly by Armenians, they have always contended that they had a right to their own autonomy, their own aspirations, for to make a lot of their own local rules, and they claimed that Nagorno-Karabakh is their ancestral homeland. And since the first awful war that was waged between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which ended in 1994, you had had essentially the Armenians in control of both Nagorno-Karabakh and several territories that surrounded it. The more recent war, one in 2020, it lasted 44 days. Azerbaijan recaptured all of those territories, plus parts of Nagorno-Karabakh, the enclave itself. So this 24-hour operation basically consolidated what Azerbaijan began and almost accomplished in 2020, which was retaking for itself all of Azerbaijan. And going into these talks, the tone was, in this nationally televised speech, the strongman Ilham Aliyev also said that they had restored sovereignty, quote, with an iron fist. That's all you need to know about how Azerbaijan approaches these talks. It is coming into these talks. It's not a 50-50, one side says, the other side says. It's not negotiations. They are going in from the victor's standpoint. And the ethnic Armenian representatives in these talks are very much the vanquished party that is now surrendering what had been essentially their aspirations for decades to limited autonomy in Nagorno-Karabakh.
Let's talk about the ethnic Armenians, because there are frustrations amongst ethnic Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh about their security and their future, because separatists have been forced to lay down their weapons. So what happens now?
No one knows. A lot of uncertainty, but the fears are that this could lead to a real exodus. And that's not too big a word. It's not too dramatic a word to use. There had been 120,000 ethnic Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh. There's still tens of thousands there. Many, hundreds if not thousands, have reportedly taken refuge at the airport. They're trying to get out, trying to flee the enclave, the airport located next to the Russian peacekeeping base. And right now you have the European community and others out there saying really concerned that Azerbaijan will respect and safeguard the rights of the ethnic Armenians who remain in this enclave. I want to just quickly show you a quote from the Armenian foreign minister. Now, this was at the UN General Assembly. It was at a forum, actually, at the UN General Assembly, not to the whole assembly. 120,000 people, including women, children, elderly people, currently facing an existential threat to their lives as Azerbaijan tries to, ready for this, ethnically cleanse and deprive the people of Nagorno-Karabakh from their right to live in their homeland in security, freedom, and dignity. You see those words, ethnically cleanse? Now, you might raise your eyebrows and say, those are fighting words. Those are, wow, strong words, ethnically cleansing. But this is a theme that rises time and time and again. Armenians bring it up both in Nagorno-Karabakh and outside in Armenia. They see this as Azerbaijan essentially trying to drive them, to erase them, to drive them from Nagorno-Karabakh. There are parallel parallels drawn as well with, say, what Russia has been trying to do with Ukraine. People aren't perhaps using as much the word ethnic cleansing. It's an extremely loaded and charged term. But this sense of trying to drive out or reclaim with an iron fist sovereignty over a region. Those are the fears now, despite Aliyev, the Azerbaijani president, saying he will safeguard the rights of ethnic Armenians. The Armenians there are not buying it, and they are very fearful for their future.
Let's talk about Russia for a second, because Vladimir Putin was a staunch ally of Armenia, but many Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh feel like they've been left out to dry by Russia, the West, and Armenia.
Absolutely. You summed it up very well. In fact, in the protests we've seen in Yerevan, in the Armenian capital, and remember, the prime minister there said that he had no role in the ceasefire negotiations, that Armenia had no troops presence there in this conflict. But protests in Yerevan, you've had people calling out Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, and the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, calling them expletives that I will not repeat here. But a real sense that Russia, a putative ally, right? Russia basically was seen as a security guarantor for Nagorno-Karabakh and the Armenians there. It had the 2,000 peacekeepers there trying to sort of safeguard and protect their rights. That's since 2020 and the last war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And at the same time, Russia has a military base in Armenia. What's happened here, though, what's interesting is some observers say, well, Russia's now losing influence in its backyard. It's slipping. It no longer has the same control, that this is also a defeat for Russia. But you could look at it another way as well. Armenia lately had been pivoting more towards the West, leaning West, courting NATO, courting Western allies. The Armenian prime minister, his country recently conducted U.S. joint exercises, military exercises, which is unprecedented. You can imagine, given the geopolitical context, this might have slightly irritated Vladimir Putin. And while he's not going to explicitly say so, and he's actually called Pashinyan reportedly,
Yesterday,
or is going to, and it basically wants to protect the rights of Armenians, and it's called on Azerbaijan to do so and all of that. At the same time, you could see that there's perhaps a little bit of that vindictiveness, a little bit of a desire for vengeance there, given the fact that Armenia has been sort of going the way, perhaps from Russia's perspective, of the color revolutions that we've seen, leaning west rather than into Russia's orbit.